Hello, this is a short video going through some recent changes to the NPC stat block and NPC functionality. First and foremost, you'll notice that now on any of the NPC tabs, there's a quick reference bar that's similar to the reference bar that's used within a PC sheet, but it's tied to the individual entries within the NPC stat block rather than the fields that were used in the PC sheet. I've included the wounded and dying values in here. Now, for the majority of people, that's not going to, for the majority of games, that's really not going to be used. When an NPC hits 0 hit points, that's them, out of the combat and things. But if you did want to keep, track of wounded and dying for an NPC, you could use those. There's no automation tied to that. It's up to you to make the various, stabilization checks and recovery checks and fill out those fields as you need. I mean, I may remove them at some point in the future unless there's any feedback really desiring those to be kept there. So basically, you can make your saves from there, just like you would, making your saves from those fields. But if you're working on other, sections of the screen of the NPC sheet, you can roll from there as well. Doing initiative. This isn't a replacement for the usual kind of defenses as well that you could roll directly out of the NPC once they're in the combat tracker. But that's just providing some information there. The second thing that's been added is an activities tab for the NPC. Now, unlike when you create a new PC, it populates you with all of the activities that actually have that are set to auto-create. Such as this one, it's auto-create, so when a PC is created, it's going to automatically create them. That's not going to happen for the NPCs because that would just overload the data in the combat tracker and the NPC data. This is really if you want to have an actual specific activity that NPC might do. Say, for instance, they have a grab special ability or something like that, or they do some grappling. You could just drag the grapple activity into the NPC sheet, and it's going to create a category called skill activities. It's going to create a section called athletics, and it's going to put that grapple activity in there, and then it'll have the various different some actions associated with them. The usual thing, if you click that, it shows you the details of the actual grapple activity, and it also gives you some how to use details at the bottom there as well. So that can be quite handy for, activities that are quite relevant to that actual NPC itself. So when you're creating these, you need to drag them kind of into an empty area so that the rule set's going to create them encounter activities basic actions. If you don't want to use the auto-created ones, then you can just add them into an existing section. And as usual, you can unlock this and you can create new activity sections and new activity categories and new activity sections in here, and reorder things and create your own if you actually want to within an NPC. Again, I wouldn't recommend putting a bunch of activities in here because that is going to overload the database record that's using in the combat tracker, especially if you have multiple of these in there. So just key kind of things that you want to that might be specific to the NPC. Previously, you could just use these if it was an NPC's actual turn in the combat tracker, so you can see here it's their actual turn. You could also just open the activity itself from the activity list. You could roll the check, and it's going to make a check with, I need to actually target somebody for that to mean anything. And you can roll the grapple check just straight from here, and it will use the currently active NPC. Makes the roll. Notice this, it's adding. We'd actually increase the multi-attack penalty there because those activities actually increase the multi-attack penalty. So it was only adding 3 because this NPC's got an acrobatics of +8, but it was on multi-attack penalty 2. because it was the second grapple that I've rolled in this turn. So that will, and then just give you the the results. So you've got a couple of options. Just run it from the activities if it's the NPC's turn, or if they're frequently used activities, just you can add them to the activities tab, and they're especially relevant for reactions. So if they were used out of turn or something like that. So the additional functionality as well that this recent release brought in is shield functionality within the NPC stat block. So this is a new section that you'll see here, which is the actual hardness, shield, hit points, any shield damage, and shield break threshold. When you first create a character, an NPC, those won't be visible. You'll need to put a check in the shield and fill out the data. The system will, when you add an NPC to the combat tracker, it will parse out of the items. It will look for this string, hardness 5, hit points 20, break threshold 10, and automatically populate those. But if you're creating NPCs yourself, you probably just want to put those in manually when you're creating that NPC. So let's give this a go and see this actually in action. So we have the Skeletal Champion. It's their turn. At some point, they're going to spend an action to raise their shield. Note that you can raise it in the combat tracker, in the attack kind of section, or you can raise it in the Quickref on any of the tabs in the NPC sheet, and they will be synchronized together. Then say Antaro's going to attack with the Star Knife, and they miss, but I mean for this demonstration purposes, so yeah, notice 19, that would normally hit, but because they had the shield raised, it's actually 21, so it's a hit. But just for this demonstration, let's just assume that they've actually hit. The GM decides to use the shield block functionality, so that actually applies a shield block with a roll. It's only going to apply for the next roll, so it will actually be removed after the damage is rolled. And as well, if you want, you can click the reaction to say that you've used the reaction for that NPC for this turn. And then we'll roll the damage for the Star Knife. So 9 damage. Notice it's actually 0. This is because this is slashing damage, and the Skeletal Champion has resistance 5 slashing, so that reduces 9 to 4, and then the shield block, because of the hardness of that shield, reduces it to 0, and there's no actual damage done. It does say shield damage, just because there's damage existing on it now. Sorry, that was from an earlier test. So that's fine. It's absorbed. The shield has absorbed all of the damage, and the skeleton hasn't taken any wounds. So maybe in a future round, so we'll go back to the Skeletal Champion. Notice the shield raise and the reaction are removed at the beginning of their turn. So again, they could raise their shields, and Antaro's now going to actually use their light mace or on their Star Knife, just do bludgeoning damage. For argument's sake, they hit. The GM decides to use the shield block again. And we see now 10 points of damage, and this time 5 damage get actually through to the Skeletal Champion because bludgeoning isn't resisted, and it's the hardness of the shield is subtracted from that. So that 5 damage gets applied to the skeleton. You can see that here. It also gets applied to the shield. The shield had 9 damage before, so now it's got 14 damage, so that shield is broken. So even and you see that the shield's now been removed. It's no longer raised because it's broken, and the AC's dropped back down to 19. So on that turn, you could try to raise the shield, but it's just going to tell you that your shield is broken. There isn't any currently the shield repair activity isn't relevant for a NPC, so if for some reason this NPC survives and they have time to repair their shield, you'll just have to handle that manually, make the appropriate checks, and just heal that damage as appropriate. So that's really the basic functionality there. At the moment, we're just working through updating the old records, but also we put some code in that tries to parse out the shield details when you add a NPC to the combat tracker. So, for example, I know that a hobgoblin soldier has a shield. So we can see that here they have a wooden shield, hardness 3, hit points 12, break threshold 6, but they don't have an actual shield entry in there. This because these haven't been updated. So, but when you do add a hobgoblin soldier to the combat tracker, that the system passes out this information from the items. Hardness 3, so that's being passed out from there. We still have to do some code just to update these shield blocks to actually use shield block. So for the moment, if you just come down here and change this effect here to just be shield block, and use that when you need to. And then you can just use that when you need to. Just apply that shield block there, and then it's the same thing. If you apply if you shield raise, it's going to read the AC for the shield raised from there, and it's going to track damage and everything else. So if the Hobgoblin Soldier did raise their shields, and they're going to get some damage from Antaro. So 9 damage. The shield's broken because it's only a little wooden shield. But at least there was 3 damage was absorbed by the hardness there. So hopefully that's a good overview of how the new NPC Shield functionality does work. As I say, we will be providing more functionality that attempts to modify the shield block for stat blocks that haven't been converted yet. So when you add it to the combat tracker, it will replace the current effects with just the shield block effect. And also we will be coding a NPC shield repair activity. I don't even have it in here. I can't remember what it's called. Yeah, repair shield. We'll be coding one of those that will actually then work for the NPCs as well. So thanks for watching, and if you have any questions, just post in the forums. Thanks very much.